All right, this is one of 3 short lectures to accompany Chapter 12 in the OpenStax Anatomy and Physiology textbook. Okay, there's a lot of material in these nervous system chapters, so I'm going to divide it up into 3 short lectures. This first one is on the organization and tissues of the nervous system. So remember, we usually start with kind of a general functions of the nervous system. And for us here, it's really 3 functions. The nervous system carries sensory input, okay, from sensory receptors that, like the eyes and the ears, or sensory receptors in the skin, or even in the digestive tract or the muscles. Okay, secondly, the nervous system carries motor input. Okay, this motor input is sent from the nervous system to other organs, and so it's controlling other organ systems. This would include the muscles and particularly the glands. And so a lot of what the nervous system does is receive information and then send out information to control other organs. Then the third thing it does is it integrates information. Okay, and these integration centers, we've already dealt with them. They do things like they determine the set points for homeostasis. And so they may carry input or evaluate input from many different organs and things and then decide on what to do. This also includes some of the functions of the nervous system that we're more familiar with, like consciousness, memory, thought, things like that. Okay, so 3 general functions, and then we often deal with divisions of the nervous system. And so there's 2 basic divisions based on an anatomical organization. The central nervous system includes the brain and spinal cord. This system is encased in bone. It's floating in cerebral spinal fluid, enclosed in membranes called meninges. We'll talk a lot about them later. This is where the most complicated integration occurs. Then the peripheral nervous system. This is nerves and clumps of nervous tissue called ganglion that are found outside the central nervous system. They're not enclosed in bone or floating in cerebral spinal fluid. This also will include sensory receptors and nerves and things like that. Mostly this is sensory and motor stuff. These anatomical divisions perform different functions. The peripheral nervous system is mostly carrying things to and from the central nervous system. Central nervous system does some integration, some storage, and responding to things. In addition, we can also think of parts of the nervous system kind of differently, kind of related to function and some structural features. In particular, we can talk about the peripheral nervous system as having divisions. One division might carry sensory information from various organs to the central nervous system, and then a motor division that carries information from the central nervous system via cranial nerves or spinal nerves to glands and muscles and things like that. This motor division can be further divided into a somatic nervous system, which is primarily dealing with skin and skeletal muscle, and an autonomic nervous system, which is doing more like cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. And that can be further divided into other systems. And so this is based a little bit on function, and part of the central nervous system is devoted to controlling this motor division, these autonomic systems and the somatic system. Let me give you an example. Okay, the sensory system sends information to the central nervous system. In this case, it's the image of a sight and sound of a bear. The central nervous system processes that, integrates it with previous information so we can recognize, oh, that's a bear, that's dangerous. And then the central nervous system can integrate that information and then decide upon a response. Here, that response can involve both the somatic nervous system to control skeletal muscles and the autonomic nervous system, which will control other organs like the heart, the smooth muscle in various organs and glands. Okay, here, and it shows this guy running away. That would be the absolute worst thing you can do. That would cause the bear to start to chase you. Okay, so that's kind of our divisions of the nervous system. Okay, so next then we're talking about the tissues of the nervous system. Okay, the main cells of the nervous system are neurons. Nervous tissue all contains neurons. Neurons are large cells that have a cell body with a large nucleus, lots of protein synthesis, and then they have extensions called dendrites and axons. Dendrites carry information towards the cell body, axons transmit them away, neurons send and transmit messages. Neurons can look different. There are different types. Multipolar neurons, where they have lots of dendrites in one axon. Bipolar neurons, which have essentially one dendrite and one axon. And then unipolar neurons, where the cell body is off to the side and then there's basically one projection, just a large axon. That really, these are found in different places, but there's not too much difference in how they work. They're all sending and transmitting messages. The other type of cell, and really the cell that kind of determines what type of nerve tissue is, are glial cells. These are support cells. They hold neurons in place. They separate them. They insulate them. They help them when they're growing. They nourish them. They do lots of things. But they're much smaller than neurons, but they're quite numerous, and there's different types in different places. In the central nervous system, there are astrocytes, microglia, and ependymal cells, and oligodendrocytes. There are glial cells in the peripheral nervous system, satellite cells, and Schwann cells. I've put all the slides in, but I'm just really going to talk about 2 or 3 types. Astrocytes are the most abundant of the glial cells. They hold neurons in position. They form the blood-brain barrier. They are very, very abundant. They assist neurons. They're the most common cell. Okay. Ependymal cells, these cells form membranes inside the central nervous system. They look like epithelial cells, but they are not true epithelial cells. They're glial cells. They produce cerebrospinal fluid. They help circulate it. They're important that way. I'm going to skip over microglia. There's a picture of them. And then the last type of cell I'm going to talk about for glial cells are myelinating cells, oligodendrocytes and Schwann cells. These cells wrap themselves around axons and dendrites and secrete a lipoprotein called myelin. Myelin insulates axons and helps them transmit impulses faster. I'll have a lot to say about myelin later. It's the most important glial product that's produced there. And so Schwann cells also produce myelin in the PNS. And the main type of nervous tissue that we distinguish is either myelinated or unmyelinated. And so that turns out to be very important. Myelin is very important. It helps increase the speed of nerve transmission. And I'll say a little bit about that later. Okay, so that's our introduction. Okay, the nervous system controls other organs. Its 3 main functions are sensory, motor, or integration. The nervous system can be thought of as having several divisions: central and peripheral nervous systems, somatic, sensory and somatic, the autonomic divisions. We'll talk about all those later. Neurons themselves send and transmit messages, and glial cells support neurons. Some make myelin. That's it. That's our first bit.